Welcome, everybody. It's my great pleasure to welcome you here to the University of Notre Dame. I'm Carter Sneed. I'm the director of the DeNicola Center for Ethics and Culture, and I'm so pleased that you could join us this evening for our 20th annual fall conference entitled, I Have Called You Friends. We're thrilled to have so many friends, old and new, joining us for this year's conference. These 3 days each November have been the highlight of the fall semester here at Notre Dame, and tonight we gather to renew this great tradition. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with our work, the DeNicola Center for Ethics and Culture was established in 1999 to share the richness of the Catholic moral and intellectual tradition through teaching, research, and engagement at the very highest level and across a range of disciplines. To serve Notre Dame both here on campus, at Notre Dame, but also to serve the greater good as Notre Dame in the global public square. We do this in 4 ways. Obviously, we, as being a center at a university, we focus on academic research and academic programming, of which the Fall Conference has become the centerpiece, along with several robust publication series with our friends at the University of Notre Dame Press and their terrific director, Stephen Wren. We focus on student formation. The lifeblood of our work here are the students. Through our Soren Fellows program, which began in 2014 with 12 students and now boasts over 300 students, Soren Fellows of the DeNicola Center, that we provide mentoring, academic programming, summer internships, and the like, both for undergraduate and graduate students at the university. We are deeply engaged in the public square through my own work in public bioethics, but also through the work of our affiliated scholars seeking to build a culture of life worldwide where every human being is valued and protected from conception to natural death. And of course, and most recently, we've begun assisting the university in its goal of hiring in a way to secure and advance the Catholic mission of the university, to help the university attract, recruit, retain, and hire the most elite faculty from all over the world who are passionate about Notre Dame's distinctive Catholic mission. Since the center's founding, the Fall Conference has been our largest annual event. In fact, it's the largest academic event at the University of Notre Dame. It's a truly unique and exciting gathering of scholars, students, and friends from around the globe who come together every year to grapple with some of the most vital questions of ethics, culture, and public policy. This year, we hit a record, more than 850 guests registered for the Fall Conference, which means we probably have about 1,500 people here. A lot of emails this morning I got. I'm not registered. Can I come? Yeah, come on. And we're looking forward to spending time in conversation and reflection with all of you in the days ahead. Why did we choose the theme of friendship for our 20th anniversary Fall Conference? Well, our inaugural Fall Conference featured presentations and conversations exploring themes found in Pope John Paul II's great encyclical Evangelium Vitae. 2 of the speakers at that first conference, Alistair McIntyre and Peg Hogan, Margaret Monahan Hogan, are with us once again this year to present at the 20th conference. We've hosted many other notable speakers over the years, including Charles Taylor, Michael Sandel, Jim Heckman, Nobel Prize winner, Helen Alvarez, Archbishop Charles Brown, Alice von Hildebrand, John Finnis, Sister Helen Prejean, Roger Scruton, and many, many, many others. It's been referred to by some as Catholic Woodstock, which I'd like to point out that there's not as much nudity at this event as there was at Woodstock. Not no nudity, but less nudity and more appropriate in context, mostly involving the changing of babies. We've said goodbye to a great number of friends as well. We continue to treasure the wisdom we received from Cardinal Francis George, Jean Bethke Elshtain, Tris Engelhardt, Ralph McInerney, Michael Novak, and Don Briel, among many other dear friends who have passed. Our founding director, David Solomon, who is with us tonight, is a man of capacious heart and welcoming mien, whose vision for the center was that it would be a place of hospitality where friends would engage one another on the big questions surrounding beauty, truth, and goodness, informed by the rich Catholic moral and intellectual tradition. The legacy that David bequeathed us continues to inform our work, and we are grateful for his ongoing friendship. At the conclusion of our 17th annual Fall Conference, we announced a generous gift that endowed the David Solomon Fellowship to support outstanding graduate students whose interests intersect with the work of our center and who have demonstrated a passion for our mission and the Catholic mission of Notre Dame. Our inaugural David Solomon Fellow is with us here tonight, Andreas Waldstein, who began his PhD studies in philosophy this fall. Let's recognize Andreas and his family who are here as well. There he is. In addition to the fellowship, we have also celebrated David's friendship by helping support the publication of a new volume of essays in his honor, Beyond the Self, Virtue, Ethics, and the Problem of Culture, which you will find noted in the back of your conference program. We're delighted to have many contributors to this festschrift with us, including its editor, Raymond Hain, student of David Solomon, and several other longtime friends of the center. David's vision for the center was that conversations about the most vexing public issues of ethics and culture would cut across not just the academic disciplines, but across the generations as well, and would include established scholars, students, and interested friends from beyond the confines of campus. Our annual fall conference is one of the places where we see this vision played out most strikingly. Over the next 3 days, we will hear from undergraduate and graduate students, professors, pastors, parents, physicians, poets, filmmakers, and podcasters. Ken wanted me to include that. The great conversation about friendship begins tonight. Before I introduce tonight's speaker, I'd like to extend special thanks to our dear friend Martin Kremers, the Dean of the Mendoza College of Business, who opened its doors to host the panels and invited sessions throughout this conference. With the new McKenna Hall Conference Center under construction, we're grateful for Martin and the Mendoza College of Business for their generous hospitality. Also, none of this would be possible without the generous hospitality of our benefactors, including members of the board of the DeNicola Center, 3 of whom are present this evening, some more of whom will be coming shortly, Tony and Christy DeNicola, Kathy Geschwind, and David Bender. And now to introduce this evening's speaker. We are incredibly honored to begin this year's fall conference with a presentation by a dear friend of the University of Notre Dame, the Most Reverend Borys Gudziak, Archbishop Metropolitan of the Ukrainian Catholic Archeparchy of Philadelphia. Archbishop Gudziak is a native of Syracuse, New York, the son of immigrants from Ukraine. He earned a bachelor's degree in philosophy and biology from Syracuse in 1980 and received an STB in theology from the Pontifical Urban University in Rome in 1983. He returned to America to pursue a doctorate in Slavic and Byzantine cultural history at Harvard University, successfully defending his dissertation in 1992. He returned to Rome to earn a licentiate in Eastern Christian Studies from the Pontifical Oriental Institute and was ordained a priest on November 26, 1998. He founded and directed the Institute of Church History in Lviv, Ukraine from 1992 to 2002. In 1995, beginning in 1995, he was vice rector and then rector of the Lviv Theological Academy, which became the Ukrainian Catholic University in 2002. It is the first Catholic university established in the territory of the former Soviet Union. He served the university as rector and then president. In 2012, Father Gudziak was appointed bishop of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church in France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and Switzerland. He has been the recipient of multiple awards, including the Cavalier of the Order of the Legion of Honor in France and the Jan Nowak Jezeransky Award in recognition for his work in shaping civil society in Central and Eastern Europe. In February 2019, Pope Francis appointed Bishop Borys as Archbishop of Philadelphia for Ukrainians and Metropolitan for the Ukrainian Catholic Church in the United States. In June 2019, he received the Notre Dame Award from this university for his tireless work in support of the truth that, quote, the aspiration of Catholic education is not simply the imparting of knowledge and skills, but the transformation of lives and ultimately the healing of a broken word. Those are the words of our president, Father John Jenkins, which he delivered in conferring the award on Archbishop. Please join me in welcoming Archbishop Borys Gudziak.
Good evening. I'm delighted to be here. And I want to congratulate the center and the university for what you do. I don't know, probably many of you come here often. This is, I think, only the 3rd or 4th time that I'm at Notre Dame, and just the warmth of people. People hug each other, you know. We bishops can't hug people easily these days, you know. Everything everything's a little bit upside down. I returned to the U.S. after 32 years in Europe, and coming to Notre Dame is definitely a highlight of my first months. And I'm very grateful to the university, to Father Jenkins, the decision makers, for recognizing the Ukrainian Catholic University with the Notre Dame Award this year. It was a real shot in the arm for a country that is enduring an invasion, a war, and where young people are dying every day. I also want to congratulate you for choosing the title of friendship. There's so much division today, so much fear and the responding aggression that is always connected with fear. It's present here. Europe is dividing. That unification of Europe with St. John Paul II worked for so intensely is showing fissures. And a profound reflection, experience, and promotion of friendship is really what the world needs, what America needs, what the church needs today. So I'm really encouraged by the titles of all the talks. Friendship from every possible perspective, scriptures, theology, St. Thomas, friendship in politics, business, family, life. I don't know if everybody saw the program. There's over 120 speakers, I think. It's really amazing. I want to arrive at kind of a personal testimony about friendship, but I will place it in a bit of a context. And many of the speakers here will be more precise and more eloquent in the different breakout sessions that have started already and will continue for the next days. I think we're called to friendship in good times and in bad times. We're graced with a lot of grace, a lot of things that people hope for, that people enjoy, that people never in the history of humanity had. We're at a great university, and education is so important. Never before had so many people globally had access to education, to literacy, to the Word, which of course allows us to read and understand the Word of God. I don't know if people realize that in 1800, about 90% of the world's population was illiterate. Only 200 years ago. Today, almost 90% of the world's population is literate. It's an amazing grace and gift that we enjoy. It's a good thing. There is a certain type of decrease in violence. If we look at the 16th and 17th century, the European powers, who were colonial at that time and dominating most of the world, during those 2 centuries, they were at war 70, 80, or 90% of the time. Just all the time. War, war, war. I think most people here are fortunate that they've never seen war, never endured it, never really carried directly its scars. It's a terrible thing. It's an act of hatred. It's a passion to dominate. terrible things happened, often among Christian peoples. I spent a few years in Verdun, in Paris, in France, but nearby is Verdun, a place where during World War I, the Germans and French had a front that was 11 kilometers long and 2 kilometers deep. In 300 days, about 300,000 soldiers were killed. Another 300,000 or so were maimed, and 200,000 were missing in action, never found. They drowned in the mud. That's almost 3,000 people a day. The Germans had on their helmets, Gott mit uns. And the French were still pretty Catholic. It's a grace that in many countries we don't have war like that. The totalitarian regimes in the 20th century, through the wars, purges, persecutions, killed about 180 million people. The famine in China in the late 50s and early 60s, orchestrated by Mao, killed about 30 million people, plus or minus 5 or 10. Nobody knows exactly. The Holocaust, the artificial famine that Stalin orchestrated in Ukraine. In Ukraine in the 20th century, between 12 and 15 million people were killed. And between 1932 and 1946, 47, it was the most dangerous place on earth. It had the greatest likelihood to die. During World War II, 24% of the population of Belarus was killed in 6 years. 18% of the population in Ukraine and in Georgia. It's good to have peace. Peace sometimes is not perfect. Sometimes we make compromises, but war is devastating. And there's less of that total war. There's hybrid war. There's a lot of proxy wars. But today, the great powers are not in direct global conflict. They're not at world war. Racism, discrimination, sexism are at probably the lowest point. One reason why Notre Dame developed was because an O'Reilly couldn't go to an Ivy League school. In much of the world, the question of human rights and the dignity of people is being promoted. Women have opportunities that they never had before. These are good things. Extreme poverty is decreasing. After 1990, more than 1 billion people have been moved out of extreme poverty. And now, this is something that we don't, in the developed world recognize, but now more than 1/3 of the people in the world live off of more than $10 a day. That's an achievement, because 2/3 of the world still live for less than $10 a day. Think about it when you get that real fancy coffee at Starbucks. People live longer. In my family memory, the death of young people was kind of a main story. My grandparents buried 8 children. The 9th one was sent off to Siberia, and my father became a refugee. 10 years of his youth was the war and refugee status. Life expectancy has grown from 1950, when globally it was about 46, to today it's 70. God gives us life, and we're called to preserve it, foster it. And according to certain criteria, that is happening. Child mortality is down from 58%, down 58% only since 1990. And undernourishment has fallen by 41%. Maternal deaths at childbirth have dropped by 43% in that period. These are real things. You know, I'm celibate and I don't have children, but I've seen parents agonize around the health of their children. It's so good to have good medical care. These are, in many ways, good times. Today, I'll pick on you, Michal, a little bit, because it was great to see Michal Wallstein today. In 2008, he was given 3 months to live. If this had been 50 or 100 years earlier, that would have probably happened, barring, the Lord's intervention. But the Lord works through the hands of physicians, through the scientists, through the work that is being done to promote the lives of people. These are some of the good things that are happening, and I think a lot of it is done out of friendship, out of good intention. I don't canonize our times, and I don't canonize longevity, but we do appreciate these things. And yet, the times are not so good. In fact, they're similar to, in condition, they're similar to what it was in 1914 when the Western world was convinced that progress would lead us to great happiness. And then the massacres began, the world wars, the genocides. The technology was supposed to advance human dignity, was used to kill people. Today we have technological progress, but I think we have less hope. In the US, anxiety and depression among the adults and youth are increasing. More and more young people suffer from depression. Stress level has risen. There's lower level of life satisfaction. I serve in Pennsylvania. That's one of the states I serve in. It's a center of the opioid crisis. Drug overdoses left and right. Loneliness has become an epidemic. And specialists say that loneliness has more adverse effect on your health than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And that sense of abandonment, of being alone, is worse than obesity for your health. It's important to focus on friendship, because no amount of material, educational, technological, industrial welfare can compensate for the relationships that we are called to. Distrust grows. Now, in some places, for actually billions of people, There's very objective reasons why they don't trust others. Between Estonia and Albania, can you put them on the map? It's always helpful, especially in the US, to kind of... Estonia is near Finland. Albania is near Greece. From Estonia and Albania, for about 8 time zones in the northern expanse of the Eurasian continent, all the way to China and Vietnam, there are 2 billion people that lived or continue to live under communism. And although one of the good things is that over 25 nations have freed themselves of communism. And in this American society, American advocacy, the role of the church, and especially of St. John Paul II, had tremendous effect. In all of these countries that were or continue to be communist, where millions of people were killed, where the system killed systematically, people over generations developed a reflex to put on a mask, put up a facade, build a wall. Because the outside world is dangerous. You don't know if your wife is informing. In the Soviet Union, and I say this often, there was a hero. His name was Pavlik Morozov, Little Paul Morozov. Almost every town had a street named after him. What was the legend? As a boy, he turned his father in to the Soviet security authorities. And every school child was given Pavlik Morozov as a role model. Andreas, you're supposed to turn in your father. And so people in the family don't say things because you can't trust. And it becomes like a radiation. You can't taste it. It has no smell, no color, but it mutates the genes. There's an extra fear chromosome. It's a reflex. You can't control it. 2 billion people have an added obstacle to cultivate profound friendship. From the scriptures, we know, from our faith, we experience that the Lord so yearns to make us his friends. Moses had a special privilege to see face to face. Abraham was called a friend. The value of friendship was modeled by David and Jonathan. And then Jesus came to us. Our faith, our church, our theology, our civilization is based on this incredible gesture that God comes to be close, to convey his divinity. And Margaret, he sits next to us. And 30 years pass, there's a childhood, there's the town interaction, family, cousins, there's working as a carpenter, full immersion in the sweat, the tears, the joys. He emerges where? At a wedding, multiplying the wine. Just reminding all you Puritans out there. What a God, what a Lord. And what is he conveying? He's conveying the divine life shared by the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Friendship would be like a symbolic word, a metaphor. We don't really know what that mystery entails. But it motivates the Father to send his Son into our grime, into our anxiety, our sin, the pitch blackness that we can create, into our hell, into our death, to create relationship, to create trust, intimacy, to establish an alliance. All these are things that you will be discussing in more depth in the conferences. And I think we are called to really focus on this quality of closeness, this intimacy. Greater love has no one than this, that one laid down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you slaves, for the slave does not know what his master is doing. But I have called you friends. For all things that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. It's open, it's transparent, into the depth of the mystery of God. The Second Vatican Council really focused on this. Let me quote from De Verbum, the Constitution on Revelation. In his goodness and wisdom, God chose to reveal himself and to make known to us the hidden purpose of his will, by which through Christ, the Word made flesh, next to you and me, man might, in the Holy Spirit, have access to the Father and come to share in the divine nature. Through this revelation, therefore, the invisible God, out of the abundance of his love, speaks to men as friends and lives among them, so that he may invite and take them into fellowship with himself. This plan of revelation is realized by deeds and words, having an inner unity, an integrity of deeds and words. The deeds wrought by God in the history of salvation manifest and confirm the teaching and reality signified by the words, while the words proclaim the deeds and clarify the mystery contained in them. By this revelation, then, the deepest truth about God and the salvation of man shines out for our sake in Christ, who is both the mediator and the fullness of revelation, our friend. In these days, we all rejoice in the canonization of Cardinal Henry Newman, John Henry Newman, a great practitioner of friendship. He wrote over 20,000 letters. 20,000 letters. His letters are 32 volumes. That's a lot of work to cultivate relationship, to cultivate friendship. Read Cardinal Newman. Little quote. Now I shall here maintain, in opposition to such notions of Christian love, and with our Savior's pattern before me, that the best preparation for loving the world at large And loving it duly and wisely is to cultivate an intimate friendship and affection towards those who are immediately about us. You can't love everybody at once unless you start loving everybody one by one. What are we towards our earthly friends in the instincts and wishes of our infancy? Such we are to become at length towards God and men. It's friendship that is the school of the spiritual life, which reflects the gift of relationship that we have by virtue of being created in the image and likeness of God. God is triune, He's personal, and there's relationship. And we as persons are called to relationship. We're called to friendship. That's where we thrive. And if you have good friendships, you can smoke 2 packs a day. I'm here because of friendship. A friendship that Jim McAdams fostered, that Brian Daly maybe initiated for me, has been cultivated by other people in this community. And I believe as a bishop that we are called in a special way to return to the disciplines of friendship. Yes, we need all the strategies and the budgets but we're not a corporation. We're a community of friends of the Lord, and by virtue of that, of each other. And I want to share with you how friendship can build and how friendship makes us leaders, and how friendship gives fruits and can have purpose, but how good it is also for it to be totally free and gratuitous. I started going to the Soviet Union over 30 years ago, where I encountered this fear. It was still Soviet. And I met the underground church when it was still in the underground. The Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, which had about 4 million members in 1939 with 3,000 priests, was totally on a visible level liquidated in 1945-46. All the bishops were arrested. Hundreds of priests with their families were deported to Siberia. The church was rendered illegal. And it remained the biggest illegal church in the world for 43 years until 1989. And it was very reduced. By 1989, there were only 300 priests left, with an average age around 70 in a country that had a life expectancy for males of 63. Human terms, it had no future. It was written off, sometimes by Catholics, who were realists. I mean, what can you do? It's tragic. Only approximately 0.5% of the pre-war population had any contact with the priests, because the 300 priests could serve 50, 100 people. That's less than 30,000, maybe 15,000. That's how many of the Eastern Catholics were in some way churched. But what a community it was, forged in that fire of persecution. When I met the bishops for the first time in the underground, it was a revelation. They had to drop a lot of things. Every last thread of the garment of the infrastructure was stripped off. Nothing. No churches, no schools, no institutions. Everybody had a secular job. The bishops, one drove an ambulance, the other was a coal stoker in a factory, others were night watchmen, etc., etc. And yet they were profoundly friends of Christ. And there was an incredible, intense relationship of those in the underground. They might not know each other's name because you wouldn't name yourself as you were in the underground seminary. The 5 students in that bishop's house didn't know what their names were for years. But there was a transcendent, profound relationship of heart to heart. Today, there are 3,000 priests again, from 300 to 3,000 in 30 years. And the global Ukrainian Catholic Church of 5 million has 800 seminarians. It's like if Los Angeles had 800 seminarians. The friendship was not just, kind of a nice thing. It cost profoundly to be a friend of Christ in an atheist totalitarian system. It costs to pass on the faith to your children. But the fruits are amazing. And it became the foundation for a minority church that today has only 8% of the population, but has a singular moral authority in society, spreading Catholic social doctrine throughout the different systems of the country, leading people in their struggle for justice, for democracy, for freedom, for dignity. It was all based on that relationship. The relationship that martyrs have with our Lord and with each other. A lot of things become very secondary. A lot of the things we get hung up on. So when it came time to build a university, this church and its intellectuals decided that this university would be built on the martyrs who met the greatest challenge of the 20th century, did so in friendship, and can teach us maybe something about the challenges of the 21st. The martyrdom and the heroism and the fruits were real, but so were the scars. That stuff in the DNA, that fear, that distrust, the triple protective system. And so in constructing this university, there was a second M. The first is the martyrs. You'll be tested on this if I run into you tomorrow. The second M is the marginalized. And inspired by Jean Vanier, who saw the great gift of people with special needs, this community which aspired to high academic achievement, which required intellectual talent, high IQ, brought those that don't have high IQ, that are most ostracized in post-Soviet society and generally in academic life, to the very center. And not because they need us, because they need our social handout, but because the children of God with special needs have special gifts. They don't care where you got your PhD or how many publications you have. They don't notice how rich or poor you are or which title you carry. They have one basic question: can you love? And we decided we need people that in an academic community will, with their whole being, body, presence, with every smile, with every tear, will ask students and faculty, can you love? There's no more important pedagogical question. And so our friends with special needs began helping us who are handicapped in fostering friendship. And it built an incredible community. And that's what Notre Dame recognized. And I'm grateful for that. Today, it's that kind of leadership that we need. A leadership of vulnerability. I think Pope Francis is groping for this. He's encouraging us to be vulnerable. He's calling us basically to one thing, the example of Jesus, who strips himself. Read Philippians 2. How the Lord left the power of divinity, came, sat down next to us in the thick of our experience, becoming friend with very concrete people, Peter and John and Nathaniel. It's not an ideology. It's not a system. There weren't too many buildings there in Jesus' time, nor in Paul's, nor for 300 years. So maybe if we lose the buildings and the endowments and the properties, maybe that's not the end of things. If we can recover or develop more profoundly our friendship. And it's when we are friends for nothing that friendship becomes more pure. When the kingdom becomes visible and clear. And that friendship helps us in good times and bad. So I want to encourage you, coming to this conference and coming out of it, to see Jesus as your friend. Spend 5 minutes every day trying to look in his eyes before you go to sleep. Let that be the last thing you do. And then begin your day seeing the face of Jesus in the face of every person you see. It will be amazing. It is amazing. Many of you do it already. I've experienced it here. It's important that we don't let ourselves be sucked in to the whirlpools of acidic hatreds, blaming, partisanships, but really focus on our relationship with our great friend, in which our dignity in that friendship fully flourishes, and then through which we give life to others, no matter what the circumstances, no matter what our life expectancy, no matter what our income is. I think people here in this university are called in this century to meet a great challenge, to really renew friendship with Christ and show what it means. And that's why I'm privileged to be here with you. And thank you for all the sharing, the insight, and the commitment that you make in these days. God bless you all.
Thank you again, Archbishop Gudziak, for sharing these wonderful insights and reflections with us this evening. A quick reminder that tomorrow's sessions will take place in the Mendoza College of Business, across the quad from the McKenna Conference Center construction site. You'll find a map in the back of your program. Friends, we hope you'll now join us in the hall just outside these doors for a reception where we can renew our friendships and continue our conversations. Please enjoy. We'll see you outside.